in Unity and programming. So again, I'm trying to introduce you to the concepts of programming in C# but in Unity by recapping some of the things like variables, data types, what are functions, what is a class, but the importance of brackets and things. So here's actually a blank project. So I actually started again because I updated my Unity to be the same as the one on the college systems that I teach at. But if you are following this online on YouTube, I'm using Unity 2022.3.10 F1. Okay, so it's this one here. And it's important we have the same version because there are some features that you've got on this that you won't have on a different version. So an older version will have a slightly different layout or whatever. So yeah, what did we do in the last lesson? A quick recap. We went to UI, we created a canvas. And then under the canvas, I created two children. I made two text objects. Now, there's TextMesh Pro, which is the newer Unity type. So maybe we should try and use that as well today, although that's not actually in the worksheets that I've linked in the video below, and also I will share with the class that I'm teaching in person. So, but I'm going to add two text objects. The first one is going to be called score text, and the second one is going to be called health text. So these are legacy text objects. So we've got health text. Notice I'm using camel case. Camel case is where you have separate words are indicated by having a capital for the first letter of each word. So you can't have spaces, you see, in a word, in a variable name or a type or whatever. So right, I've got these two text objects, and then I'm going to create a script. Now I'm going to create the script on my main camera because we're going to imagine that's your character, and so it may be responsible for updating the score. So I search for script. I go to inspector window. I search for script. I go to new script, and I'm going to call this game controller. Don't call your scripts. This is some mistakes that I've seen in some of the classes I teach. Don't call your script new or a protected keyword, because if you do this, Unity will get confused and it will complain. Make sure you give it a unique human readable name that means something to you or other developers when they look at it. So we've got this game script now. Unity likes to reload. I'm going to use a text editor to look at my script, but you can use Visual Studio Code. The way you edit the script is you go over to where it is, you click on the three dots and you click on Edit Script. And you give it a second, it's going to open up the script in my chosen editor. So it saves my preferences. Obviously, as I said, you'll be using Visual Studio Code. So again, looking through this code, we've got the libraries at the top. I'm going to import another library, UI Engine, because that's going to help us deal with text. And then I'm going to create 3 game objects. So a text game object called score text. And we're going to make these public because they're public because we want them to be accessed and changed. And they're going to make another public game object that is of type text, which is part of Unity UI Engine. And that's called health text. And then we're going to have 2 private variables. Private means they're things that are not allowed to be changed outside of this class. So it protects against someone hacking and tampering with the score. So we're going to have score and a private score, and we need to give it a type. Sorry, the score is going to be an integer, and then we're going to have a private float called health. Floats, as you remember, are fractional numbers, and I'm going to initialize that to 100.0 f. We need to use f because it's a float, and we're going to give the score an initial value of 0. So then we've got some functions below it. So a little quick recap. I'll move myself over here. A little quick recap on what these functions do. Start is what is called when the scripts first start. An update is called once per frame. you need a game loop in the game to check for things like collisions. I think in the last video I showed you how to update the public score text and health text in Start. But what we really want to do is we want to put these into the update function, because we want these to be updated every time that a frame happens, so that we can change what happens in the game. So I'm gonna say score text dot text. I think it's a small t. Let me just check my tutorial, which you can find in the link below, or I'll share it with the class. Yeah, so it's score text dot text. So score text, our public text object, has a property called text. It's something created by Unity, and it allows us to set the value of that so we can see that on the screen. So we're going to say that is going to equal score, and then we're going to add on the integer score. And then we're going to also have health text dot text equals health, and we're going to add on the health like this. I'm going to save that now and go back to Unity, and hopefully if the script is correct and it compiles, we won't get any red warnings. I do have a red warning down here below. Let's just check this out. When you get a red warning, you should click on it and read it. Sometimes, and it looks like one of those errors, sometimes the errors have nothing to do with your code that you've written, and it is Unity complaining about something that you can't fix. So it says fmod failed to switch back to normal output. Not sure what that means. Probably can ignore it. If it was something like you're missing a semicolon, the brackets don't match, a variable name is already taken, that's something for you, and it will give you a line number. Then we click on where the script is, which is in the main camera, and now you can see these two public game objects, score text and health text. I'm going to connect score text into there, and I'm going to connect health text into there as well. And now we've connected the script to our Unity game objects, so we can update them. Next thing we need to do is just have a little look at our canvas. So I double click on canvas, and then I go up the top here and I click on 2D. That gives me a flat front vision of how the canvas will look, and you can see that firstly the text is a little bit small, so I'm going to expand its box, and I'm going to make its font 30, and then I'm going to click on these arrow tools so we can move it along its X and its Y, and I'm going to put this score text in the top left, and then the health text I'm also going to change, so I'll move myself again, keep getting in the way. I'm also going to change the font to be 30, a bit bigger. Notice how the text disappears. That's because the box is not big enough. So we're going to have to change the size of the box so you can see the text. Now it's come back. And then I'm going to grab the arrows, and I can just grab that middle one, and I can move it along the X and the Y axis at the same time. And I'm going to position it up there. So we've got our score in the left, our health in the right. Finally, we press play, and this compiles the script and runs our game, and we should be able to see a view of our game where, well, there's nothing in my game world at the moment because I started a game, but you'll see a view of the world where you've got a health text and a score text, which are initialized to 0 for score and 100 for health. So that's just a quick recap of the things we did in the last lesson. What I want to do now is to look at the next part. So again, I'll move myself over here. We're going to look at the next part, which is to do with if statements. So control flow, if statements, variables, these are fundamentals of programming. Brackets, they're fundamentals. So you might practice them in another integrated development environment, such as Visual Studio, and Unity is a completely different environment, and the code is slightly laid out. So if you are learning Unity, it's good to learn coding and maybe re-practice it in this way in Unity. So we've got if statements. What is an if statement? An if statement is simply a condition. If this thing is true, execute the thing in the squiggly brackets below. And what are we going to do with this? This is the code that we're going to write. I'll make that slightly bigger if you want a smaller screen. We're going to add a test in the update function to see if the player score is greater than 100. If it is greater than or equal to 100, you win. However, we're going to also detect a key press. So we're going to use Unity's input library and see if they press the W key, we're going to keep increasing that score. And it should increase the score until it reaches 100, and then you win. Okay? So again, if you want to pause the video at any point or look through what I'm talking about, look through the tutorial, this worksheet that's linked below. You can also skip to any bits of the video because I'll timestamp it. So we go back to here, and in our update function, we are going to say if. That is the keyword if, and then we're going to say score if it is greater than or equal to 100. Right? So we've got this condition in these normal brackets, and then we've got the opening and the closing of the brackets here, and all the code that we need to execute if that is true should go in here. What do we want to execute here? Well, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to copy that line here. I'm going to change what we're setting score text to be. We're going to say score is, and then we'll put the variable in the middle, and I'm going to say you have won. Right? The score is over 100 or whatever, you have won. However, if it is not, we're using the else part. So if that condition is not true, if that condition is true, do this. If it is not true, we do the else part. So if usually has an else. It may also have an else if as well, which is something we could come on to later. If you want to look up any of the reference to things like this, the best place is to look on W3C Schools, C#. Look at the section on, let's have a quick look at that, W3C Schools, C#, and look at the if section there and read all about it. It's really important when you come across things in coding, no matter how advanced and experienced you are, developers always come across things they don't understand. And the best developers, or the ones who become the best developers, are the ones who go and look up the answer to things and really try and understand it and read the documentation. So here we kind of conditions and comparison operators we can have. So go and have a look through that. Right, so back to the code. So if that is that, else. If it's not over that, let's just set the score text. So I cut and pasted score text from below and put it inside that else bracket. Right? We're not doing anything with the health bit yet, because that's something you've got to do in the exercises at the end, which I'll come on to in a minute. So we've got if this condition, then we set that score you have won if you've got over 100 or equal to 100, else just show the score. What else do we have to do? Let's switch back to here. Now we're going to detect whether the person has pressed the key. So if we go to the internet again, look at the documentation. I'll try and put these links in the video below. If we look up input library Unity, you'll find all the documentation there on what the input library is. So scripting API input, I click on that. And basically what this library does, it allows your game to detect inputs from the keyboard, from the mouse, from joysticks, from game controllers, and then it's up to you to code what you want to happen when that event occurs. So get rid of that. Yes, I accept all cookies. And then we go down here. They often give an example. So again, they're using an if statement here, but in the if statement, instead of just comparing it to a number or or something else, the condition is that input button in this example here, get button down, is the fire button, maybe on your joystick, is that pressed? All we're going to do is detect a key. Now, we're going to use something called KeyCodes, which are really, really helpful because KeyCodes are not are something that are fixed. And so sometimes when you write out a key code detection, you have to remember the exact name of the key that you need to use. But if you use these special key codes by using this key code class, you will get it right every time. So what are we going to say? We're going to say if, and then input dot, and I forget what I've got to write here now. No matter how advanced you get, you always forget. It's always good to have examples of things that you've written before and look back at it. So if get key down, if input dot get key down. Now notice I'm writing in camel case. This is the name of the function. And what are we trying to detect? We're trying to detect keycode dot w. So think about this. What would I need to change here if I wanted to detect the X code or the V? Sorry, if I wanted to detect the X key or the V key or the space key? Well, you'd have to write key code and go and look this up or think about it. Pause the video before I give the answer. Go and look it up. You'd look at these key codes here and you look for the thing that you wanted. So for example, the space key, space. I'd simply write keycode dot space if I wanted to detect that, but I don't. I want it to be the W key. If that W key is pressed, I'm going to update score text. So I'm going to say score text dot text equals plus equal. Let's do it the longer way first. Equals score text dot text plus 10. So every time W is pressed, I'm going to add 10 to it. Now, another way of doing this, a much shorter way, because as a programmer, you want to write the least amount of code possible. You're always looking for a shortcut. You're never looking to cut on quality, but you're looking to write less code if you can. Score text dot text plus equals 10. That means these two lines mean the same thing. They're going to do the same thing. They're going to take the original value of score text, which initially is 0. It's going to add 10 to it, and then it's going to update. We need to update the score. Sorry, not the score text, because we update the private variable, and then we're detecting whether that variable has reached a certain threshold. So it's ifs. So change that here as well. So we're not updating the public. We're not updating the public game object. That is done in this if statement above. We're just updating the value of score. So, and here as well. So so score equals score plus 10 is the same as score plus equals 10. So I'll comment that out and do the shorter way, but leave that in. Right, so now if I run my code, I come back to here, it compiles. It should do. You click in the window and it should recompile the code. You give it a few seconds. If there are any errors or warnings, warnings will appear in yellow in this console, errors will appear in red, and if there's a problem in the code, it will try and update it, and I'll try and tell you what line number that error is on and how you could fix it. So press play. There's a lot of things going on in my computer at the moment. I'm uploading other videos, so the process is a bit busy, which is why maybe it's... and also I'm filming this video, so that's probably why Unity is being a little bit slow. But I'm sure if you're doing this at home on your super duper PC, it will run super fast. And here we go. We're in the game. So now if I press W, notice how the score keeps going up. 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. And I get to 100 and says the score is 100. You've won. So a quick recap on what we did. I recapped on what I did last time about creating public and private objects. The public game objects are text game objects. We are connecting the script to the actual game, the actual canvas here, by having these public game objects that we then connect here by dragging them in. And then I introduced if statements. So again, I'll put links below so you can look at W3C Schools. And the if statement, it has an if and a condition. If the score, our private variable score, is greater than or equal to 100, update the text score to say you've won. Else just show the score as normal. Then we're using Unity's input library to detect if the W key is pressed. If the W key is pressed, then we're going to update that private score number. We're going to add 10 to it. And I showed you two ways that you can increment an integer variable. And this one I left in is the better way, in my opinion, because it's shorter, less code. So there you go. Good luck. And one more thing before I go. If you followed everything I've said, look at the worksheet below and look at the extra tasks. So this is where you get to basically redo what I've just showed you. You get to practice it and write the code. First thing you got to do is player health and damage. So modify the script to initialize the player health to 100. At the moment, the player health is 100. So don't need to worry about that. Then create a new if statement in the update method. So if the S key is pressed, decrease the health by 10. Then show the updated player health on the screen. So the same way we did it for the score, you'll need to do it for the health. And then add a new statement to check if the player health is less than or equal to 0. And if it is, you need to change that game health text to game over. They said the game status text to game over, but just change the player health text. Right, so that's the first thing. Next one, win condition and level progression. Objective, introduce a win condition and level progression. So here we're saying we want you to create a new text element, right, to display the current level. So a text element that's in the middle of the screen, perhaps, and add a new variable, current level, and initialize it to 1. So we've got a private variable, current level, initialize it to 1. In that update function, you need to check if the player score is greater than or equal to a certain value. So for example, 200, then you've won the level. And when the player wins the levels, when the player wins the level, you need to increment current level, this private variable, by 1, and then that message in the middle of the screen should now say level 1 completed. Where X is the current level. Yeah? So have a go at updating the player health and reducing it, and then updating a message in the middle of the screen, which is going to be called game status text, to say game over if it gets to 0. And then you've got some text in the middle of the screen which will indicate when you've completed the level, when you get to a certain number of points. If you have any questions about that, put comments in the video below, or if you're in my class, just ask me. Thank you.